Does this prove that ending JobKeeper at the end of March was the right call?
Oh, look, it was the right call. It was a tough call, but absolutely the right thing to do. We had a whole lot of emergency spending to help the economy on the way through. The bulk of that is now in the rearview vision mirror. Out of the rich countries around the world we usually benchmark ourselves against, we are the only one who has more jobs today than when the virus first hit.
So is that you calling it a red-hot recovery, Chris?
That's me, Pete. Always good with the one-liners.
Well, JobKeeper is now going to cost $12.5 billion less than originally estimated. That's no small sum, is it?
No, and look, it always came down to that basic equation. If you could keep COVID numbers down in Australia, and we really have, then that works. You're basically repairing the budget by repairing the economy. The better the economy looks, the cheaper it becomes on the budget, and there's no better indicator of that than those extra savings on JobKeeper. The good news is pretty much across the board, because we've got COVID numbers down, people are out and spending. Because we're out and spending, we're getting the jobs. Because China is another nation doing well. You're seeing amazing things around iron ore prices. ComSec was just noting for you 2% down. That's 2% down from stunning highs. That backdrop's a good one for the budget.
Okay, well, that's some of the good news, Chris. What's the bad news in all of this?
Look, even though it's absolutely the right thing to do to repair the budget by repairing the economy, it doesn't really get you all the way back. If we have a repaired economy, once unemployment is back under 5%, and it was the right thing last week to make that target more ambitious, you'd still have a deficit, and over time, not fast. You can take a decade to do it, but one of the things that helped Australia in this crisis is that we had a strong budget. You would probably want to do that bit of extra budget repair to go the last mile.
When do you think realistically we could get to below 5% unemployment, Chris?
Look, we've been optimistic at the crazy brave end of forecasters through COVID, and we have not been optimistic enough. Basically, every time we update our forecasts, they get better. We actually don't have Australia going under 5% for a couple of years, but we have it basically sitting on or just above 5%. And it could, if we maintain anything like recent momentum, get below 5 18 months from now.
Wow, okay. But a bill has got to be paid. So cuts are going to be needed, and pretty big ones are going to be needed at some point, right?
Yeah, look, on our analysis, the eventual last mile, and remember, we were starting with a budget deficit of over $200 billion a year, but if you get the economy right, it reduces that to about $40 billion a year. Now, by global standards, that's a relatively healthy budget, but if you want a healthier one still, then the sort of yardstick, how do you save almost 2% a year of national income out of the budget? Well, talking about crazy brave, the last ones to try to do that were Abbott and Hockey with the budget back in 2014. We all know that the politics of budget repair are very tricky. Equally, you could look back at the last year and a bit and say Australia did repair its budget, and that has been a magnificent asset for us in a crisis.
So where do you think you could find $40 billion?
That's why other people get elected rather than economists. And to be fair, it is easier to see areas for new spend. We've always said more should be spent on the unemployed. It is very clear you need to spend more on aged care. And so the nation needs to have, and now is not the right time to be cutting back on defence. The nation needs to have a tricky conversation. Look at all that spending. Are there savings we can make? Look at our taxes. Is there extra money we can bring in? But we should not avoid that conversation.
How long do you think it would take before we get a balanced budget again?
Again, you don't need to do it fast. We entered this with a much healthier budget than most other nations. We exited with a much healthier budget than most other nations. Sure, our debt has gone up, but it's, again, much smaller than most other nations. And don't forget, as the Treasurer was pointing out last week, and it matches our own calculations, the interest costs that we're paying are lower today than they were before the Treasurer became Treasurer. So, yeah, look, no need to go fast, but there is a task there.
Migration is an issue too, and is going to be a big problem for a while.
It is. If you think of the things that are hurting the budget, missing migrants are hurting the budget. Missing faster growth in prices and wages are hurting the budget as well. The thing about migrants, we tend not to think, but basically, on average, our migrants are young, skilled adults, and you tend to raise, pretty good tax collections from young, skilled adults. And with migrants, we don't let them qualify for some types of spending for a while. So they, less so for state budgets, but notably for federal budgets, they help. But we know that great global race between vaccinations and mutations very much hangs in the balance. And even if, things are perfect here and vaccinations become perfect here, it's in some ways a global question around the tap on migrant numbers.
Do you think that COVID, we talked about that too just then, does that remain the biggest threat?
Oh, look, absolutely. And it is far from finished as a threat. I do think people underestimate not just the recovery in Australia, but for that matter, the global recovery. Even nations that have comprehensively stuffed up around managing COVID on the health front are on average starting to look better on the economic front. But what you are seeing in India is a reminder of the worries around potential for mutations. What you're seeing globally and here in Australia around vaccine hesitancy, these marvellous new technologies, but like any bit of new technology, we tend to be scared of it. We way overestimate the risks associated with them.
Would you be bringing forward stage 3 tax cuts?
Look, it is a genuinely tricky one. We've always said the promised tax cuts between them, stages 1, 2 and 3 were too big. And there is a case to scale back overall tax cuts. But it remains the case that if we leave out stage 3, if that just disappears off the national agenda, then, we began this phase of tax reform with an over-reliance on a pretty small number of Australians to pay a hell of a lot of personal tax, and that continues to get worse rather than better.
Okay, Chris Richardson. Appreciate your time as always. Talk to you soon. Busy couple of weeks ahead. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Pete.